You did everything right. You read the articles, you saw that most people don't eat enough fiber, and you checked. And you weren't eating enough either. So you fixed it. You added the chia seeds, you added the lentils, the beans, the berries, the oats. You did the thing the internet told you to do, and you did it properly because that's how you do things. And you got worse. The bloating got louder. By 2 in the afternoon, you're undoing a button under the table. There's gas, there's pressure, there's a distension that makes you feel like you swallowed a basketball. And you're sitting there doing the math and thinking, I'm eating the healthiest food of my adult life and I feel worse than I did on the pizza. So you conclude the obvious thing. You conclude that you are broken. Look, you're not broken. You skipped a step. And it isn't the step you think it is, because I already know what advice you got when you went looking for an answer. You were told to go slow. Every article says it. Ramp up gradually. Drink more water. Give your gut time to adjust. And I want to be very direct with you today because that advice is not wrong exactly. It's just answering a question you didn't ask. Go slow is advice about your pace. What if your problem was never your pace? Let me start somewhere that might surprise you given where this is going. Fibermaxxing is right. I mean it. I'm not going to stand here and do the thing where a guy in my line of work takes the most popular health trend of the year and tears it down so he looks smart. The trend is correct. And the people driving it are not grifters. Many of them are excellent gastroenterologists and dietitians, and they're telling you the truth. Here is the truth they're telling you. The recommendation is roughly 25 to 38 grams of fiber a day. Only about 1 in 10 Americans hit it. The average adult in this country is eating somewhere between 10 and 15 grams. So most people are running at less than half of what they need, and they've been doing it for decades. And the research on why that matters is not soft. It's some of the most studied research in all of nutrition. There's a set of systematic reviews published in the Lancet, one of the most respected medical journals in the world, that pooled 185 studies covering roughly 135 million person years of data. That is an almost unimaginable amount of human evidence. What it found is that the people eating the most fiber compared to people eating the least had something like 15 to 30% lower risk of dying from anything, and from heart disease specifically. The benefit looks strongest somewhere around 25 to 29 grams a day. So if you take nothing else from this video, most people should eat more fiber. That's real, it's well evidenced, and I want it on record before I complicate it. Now here's what nobody says next. Fiber is not a nutrient. Think about what a nutrient actually is. Protein is a nutrient. You eat it, you break it down, you absorb it, you build something out of it. It acts on you. Same with a vitamin, same with fat. You take it in and your body uses it. Fiber doesn't do that. By definition, fiber is the part of the plant that you cannot digest. Your body has no tool for it. It goes all the way through you untouched. So why does it help you at all? Because it isn't food for you. It's food for them. Fiber is the feedstock for the trillions of bacteria living in your gut. It goes down to them and they eat it. And when the right bacteria eat it, they produce compounds that strengthen your gut lining and calm inflammation and do all the other wonderful things the trend promises. Fiber is not a thing you take, it's a thing you feed. And once you see it that way, one question becomes unavoidable, and almost nobody is asking it. If fiber is a feedstock, then the only question that has ever mattered is this: who am I feeding and where do they live? Let's take those one at a time because the answers are not the same for everybody, and that's the entire point. Start with something one of the researchers quoted in NPR's coverage said, and it's an easy thing to skim past. Hannah Holscher, a nutrition professor at the University of Illinois, points out that different gut microbes break down different fibers. Different microbes, different fibers. That sounds like a small technical detail, but it's not. It means fiber is not one thing. It means eating more fiber is about as specific an instruction as hire more people. Hire who? To do what? So what happens when you send a big new shipment of feedstock into a gut where the population is healthy and diverse? Good things happen. The right organisms eat it, they multiply, they produce beneficial compounds, and your gut lining gets stronger. Everything the trend promises actually happens exactly as advertised. Now, what happens when you send the same shipment into a gut where the population is not healthy and not diverse, where something has overgrown or the balance is tipped? You feed that instead. Fiber does not care who eats it. It has no loyalty. It is a delivery of raw material, and it will go to whoever is there to receive it. And we have real evidence about what happens when the wrong crowd is there to receive it. There's a meta-analysis pulling the randomized trials of what's called a low FODMAP diet. So let me translate it. It means a diet where you strip out the most highly fermentable carbohydrates, the foods the gut bacteria eat most aggressively. And when people with irritable bowel syndrome go on that diet, when you take the feedstock away, their abdominal pain drops significantly. Their bloating drops significantly. Sit with the direction of that arrow for a second. For one group of people, more fermentable fiber means better health and a longer life. For another group of people, less fermentable fiber means less pain. Same food, opposite result. And the food didn't change. The terrain did. Now the second question, this is the one that is even less understood. Your gut is not one room. It's a long hallway with very different neighborhoods. Your colon, the last stretch, the large intestine, is supposed to be absolutely packed with bacteria. That's the fermentation plant. That's where the feedstock is supposed to be processed. Bacteria in the colon, correct, healthy, exactly as designed. Your small intestine, the long stretch above it, is a different story. That's where you actually absorb your nutrients. It's supposed to be relatively sparse, nothing like the colon. So what happens if bacteria set up shop in the small intestine in numbers where they were never meant to be? Then the fermentation is happening in the wrong room. You eat a beautiful, virtuous, high fiber meal. And instead of that feedstock traveling all the way down to the colon where the fermentation plant is, it gets intercepted early upstairs in a part of your gut that has no ventilation for it. The gas gets produced in a tube that's not built to hold gas. That's bloating. That's distension. That's the pressure and the pain and the button coming undone at 2 p.m. You didn't nourish your gut. You catered a party in the wrong room. Now here's where I have to be careful. I'm going to show you my work because there's a claim floating around this space that I checked and it could not support. You will hear people say there's a simple test for this. And if you just go get your SIBO test, that's the standard test for bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine. I went and read the research on that, and there's a study out of the Mayo Clinic published in Nature Communications that did something pretty clever. They went and directly sampled the small intestine in people with gut symptoms and people without. What they found was not what you'd expect. The standard culture-based finding of overgrowth did not line up with who actually had the symptoms. Listen to that again. The test that is supposed to tell you whether bacterial overgrowth is causing your symptoms did not reliably identify the people who had symptoms. But something else did. When they looked at the actual microbial composition, not just is there too much, but what specifically is there, that was significantly different in the symptomatic patients. So the picture is not get the standard test and you'll know. The picture is worse than that and more interesting. The volume knob isn't the answer. The lineup is, which means a lot of people are being told to go slow, and a lot of other people are being handed a test that may not be asking the right question, and everybody's still guessing. Which brings me back to the advice you got. Go slow. Every reputable outlet says it, and to be fair to them, they say it for good reason. A gastroenterologist at UCLA told NPR that somebody who isn't used to eating much fiber and suddenly ramps up to 70, 80, or 90 grams a day is going to run into real problems along the way. That's true. And the same NPR piece quotes a dietitian at Ohio State pointing out that people with conditions like IBS or Crohn's should talk to their doctor first because eating too much fiber or the wrong kinds can make symptoms worse. They are also telling you the truth. It's in the coverage, it's right there, and everybody skips it because it's the boring paragraph at the bottom of an exciting article. But here's my actual problem with go slow. And it isn't that it's false. It's that the advice is about pace, offered to people whose problem is terrain. If the fermentation is happening in the wrong room, going slower does not move the room. It just means you fill it up more gradually. You'll still get there. You'll just take 4 months to feel bad instead of 4 days. And you'll be even more confused about why, because you followed the instructions perfectly. Going slow is what you say to someone when you don't know what's actually in their gut. It's a hedge. It's the most responsible thing you can possibly say to a stranger whose data you've never seen. I don't blame a single one of those experts for saying it. If I had to give one sentence of advice to 10 million people I never met, I'd probably say the same thing. But you're not 10 million people. You're one person with one gut, one specific population of organisms living in it, in one specific arrangement. And you can stop taking advice designed for a stranger the moment you decide to find out who you actually are. Let me tell you about a client. I'll call her Deborah. Deborah was 68 when she came to us, and for nearly 3 years, she had lived with daily diarrhea. Not occasional, not sometimes after a big meal, daily. Her whole life had shrunk down around a bathroom. She mapped every building she entered. She stopped traveling. She stopped being spontaneous. She'd been told it was IBS. Now, here's the detail that gets me. 2 years before she found us, she had a colonoscopy and they found something real. They found microscopic colitis, an inflammation of the bowel lining that you can't see with the naked eye. You can only see it under a microscope. They found it and it was documented. And then she was told it had gone away. Nobody ever ran another colonoscopy to confirm that it had gone away. She was just told that it was gone. And when her symptoms didn't stop, she was handed a pill. Think about what Fibermaxxing would have done for Deborah. Think about her reading an article in 2026 that says most people don't eat enough fiber and deciding to fix it and being told to go slow and going slow and getting worse anyway and concluding that her body is simply beyond help. No amount of fiber was ever going to touch what was actually wrong with Deborah because nobody had correctly identified what was actually there. When she came to us, we didn't hand her a protocol. We ran the data first. And what the data suggested was that the inflammation everyone had assumed was resolved had, in her case, likely never fully resolved at all. That changes everything because now you're not guessing about fiber. You're actually addressing what's in front of you. In her case, over the following months, things shifted steadily. She reported her energy going from a 4 out of 10 to a 9. Her weight came down. Around the 3-month mark, her bowel function had meaningfully for the first time in 3 years. She started exercising again. She said the thing that stuck with her most was how much she finally understood about her own body. Every person's biology is different. That's exactly why we run the data before we do anything else. And I can't promise you Deborah's experience, but I'll tell you the lesson. Deborah didn't need a better protocol. She'd already tried protocols, diet changes, exercise, supplements, vitamins, medications. She'd improve a little, plateau, and then give up over and over. She didn't need a better protocol. She needed to know what she was actually dealing with. So let me be straight with you about where that leaves you. This is a real, free, genuinely useful thing you can do with everything I've told you. And I want to give it to you before I ask for anything. Because you deserve to leave this video with something in your hands, whether you spend $1 with us or not. So here it is. Stop counting grams. Start counting plants. There's a large citizen science study called American Gut, published in a journal called M Systems, that looked at thousands of people's microbiomes. And the finding that jumps out is that the people eating more than 30 different plant sources in a week had more of the gut microbes that produce the beneficial compounds we care about. 30 different plants, not 30 servings, 30 different kinds. And that counts everything: herbs, spices, nuts, seeds, beans, grains, every color of vegetable. Remember what Holscher told us. Different microbes break down different fibers. So variety isn't a nice to have. Variety is how you make sure you're not just feeding one narrow group of organisms over and over while everybody else starves. That is a better instruction than eat 70 grams of fiber. It's free and you can start tomorrow. Now let me tell you what that will not do. It will not tell you who is living in your gut. It will not tell you where they're living. It will not tell you whether the fermentation happening after your beautiful, virtuous 30-plant lunch is happening in the right room or the wrong one, because you can't feel that. You can feel the consequence, the bloating, the pressure, the fatigue. You feel those just fine, but the consequence doesn't tell you the cause, and that's exactly why people spend years cycling through diets. Low FODMAP, carnivore, elimination, add fiber, remove fiber. Each one is a guess. Each one works a little, then plateaus, and then fails. And every failed guess makes you a little more convinced the problem's you. The problem isn't you. The problem is that you've been asked to solve a system you've never been allowed to see. I went to medical school at Yale, and I left because I could see that the system I was being trained to work inside was extremely good at naming your symptom and extremely uninterested in auditing your system. IBS is not a diagnosis, it's a description. It's the system telling you politely that it looked at the easy things and it doesn't know. You don't close that gap by trying the next protocol. You close it by finally looking. That's what the Root Reveal Gut Panel is for. It's a stool test. It maps the terrain. It gives you data on what is actually living in your gut. The composition of your microbiome, the markers of inflammation, the signs of imbalance, the presence of things that shouldn't be there. It's the information that tells you whether the most popular health trend of 2026 is going to work for you or work against you. And I'd ask you to think about the math on that, the way that you would think about it at work. You are about to make a change to your daily inputs and hold it for a year. You'll spend real money on the food. You'll spend real willpower on the compliance. And you'll spend something far more expensive than either of those, which is a year of your life, either getting better or quietly getting worse while you tell yourself it must be working. You would not roll out a company-wide change on that scale without measuring the baseline first. You'd be laughed out of the room. You'd want to know where you were starting from so that in 6 months, you could tell whether it worked. You are the company. Measure the baseline. And if you've been at this a long time, if you've already been through the diets and the eliminations and the specialists, you've got a folder full of results that nobody's ever assembled to a single story, then just book a free discovery call instead. We'll look at the whole picture together and we'll tell you honestly whether what we do is a fit for your situation. Sometimes it isn't, and I'll say so. We turn people away when we're not the right answer. Here's where I want to land on this. Fibermaxxing is not a scam. That's what makes it dangerous. A scam you can spot. Good advice aimed at nobody in particular is much harder to see through. Because when it fails you, you don't blame the advice, you blame yourself. So let me take that off you. Fiber isn't wrong. Fiber is just unaimed. And if you spent years being handed unaimed advice and being asked to explain why it didn't work for you, you're not the reason it didn't work. Let's go find out what they missed.